We have reached the top 10 in our series of top returning Georgia Bulldogs. We've been doing this for over a month now, and that tells you how many good returning players Georgia has. This series is where we are looking at the top returning Bulldogs based off of PFF grades. They needed to have a grade 70 or higher, and for the most part above a sample size that was appropriate. On some of them, we anticipate their role will be high enough that we kind of gave them the bump anyway. But overall, 23 players for the Bulldogs that we're breaking down in this series. That's a good portion of the roster for Brent Rollins and myself, Dayne Young, to be talking about. We co-author Film Don't Lie for UGAsports.com. It's under the Rivals affiliation. So make sure you check out our content over at UGAsports.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our Facebook page, wherever you see our content. We appreciate you doing that. Brent, in terms of guys that I think are vital for Georgia in 2022 and 2023 when you get into title defense season, I think the guy that we're talking about today is right up there with the most important players on the team. We remind people all the time, this list is PFF grades. It's a composite of the whole season. It's not necessarily who we think's the best or the worst or who's going to be biggest contributor or whatever. This is one of those guys that personally I do think Georgia will go in large part as far as this guy or, this spot in particular, how it gets replaced. We're talking about Broderick Jones, the new left tackle for the Bulldogs, who was fantastic in the national championship game.
Yeah, so now I think speaking about that game specifically, many talk about Sawyer moving inside was him replacing Erickson on the inside unlocked everything. Not really. Sawyer was okay. There were reps where he just got destroyed in that game at guard too. He was okay in that game.
And he was beat up.
Yeah. Solid and pass pro, quick off the ball, but okay. The key though was how well, like you just said, that Broderick Jones played in the national championship game. And we'll get to some of that when we look at the plays. But like you talked about from a talent perspective and importance to the team, experience at left tackle, and now basically you have two experienced players, one supremely experienced in McClendon on the right side and then Broderick on the left side, and him finally getting a chance to be the guy, not just occasionally a guy. Now he did play 438 snaps and got, I think, like 4 or 5 starts a season ago, but he's now the guy. And this is a player who coming out of high school I remember watching his tape specifically. I don't watch a ton of them. I watch as many as I can. But I remember watching him and saying, wow, that guy could play tight end. Like he was that athletic looking and was deserving of the ranking that he had from an athletic standpoint. Like he just looked like a future NFL left tackle. And what do you see now in the offseason? Mock draft season, you see him oftentimes in those first-round mocks for next year's draft.
5-star prospect for the class of 2022. All the usual customers wanted him because of exactly what you were saying. A lot of it is body. Funny thing, though, he was on Rivals at least listed at 6'6", 330 pounds. I like to compare these to the official Georgia Dogs roster, which also is not always telling the truth. So that this is not gospel one way or the other, because Georgia would tell you that he shrunk by 2 inches and gained 15 pounds. So
he's not 6'6". I think the 6'4" is actually legitimate.
But I don't know if he's 315 pounds either. That may be close, but he's a big dude.
Yes, he is.
But he carries
he always looks
well.
Yes, he looks. You look at him, you still look at him and think that guy kind of looks like he could play tight end if he really wanted to.
Yeah. Good athlete. And look, I'll say this, and I'm singing his praises a lot because he was amazing for Georgia late in the season, particularly in that title game. Mechanics, like his body and everything is great. His instincts are great. He's got the aggressiveness that you want for a left tackle to be able to attack. Sometimes he still plays a little high. That's the common thing for tackles as they transition from kind of how they played in high school into big-time SEC play. He's working on that. I think he'll be fine. I think he'll do well. He'll end up being an NFL tackle. All the tools are there. I'm just saying that he's still in the process of refining those things, as we will see as I bring up the game tape that we've got.
Yep, because one of these we see him at right tackle, I think is where he is in one of these, if I'm not mistaken.
So here we go. There he is here at the left to start on this side.
And it's just a sort of jet sweep, but by the way, this actually is a pass play, technically, given that JT.
It's a little pop pass, right?
No pop pass play. But this is what you want from any offensive lineman on this type of play is sprinting out, getting to and running first. That's the key. Running first, beating the defensive lineman, one off the ball, and then two to the spot to where you can get your head to their outside shoulder. And what you see, I think one more count or two ahead of this is him right there, getting his head on the defensive lineman's outside shoulder, win all day, every day when you do that in zone blocking and especially when you're going more of a wide zone type blocking play, trying to get outside.
Yeah, because you want to seal this off here. He has his back completely to this sideline, so you kind of see the parallel lines there. It's a really good job to seal here, allow these guys to get up to this section, and yeah, there you go. Boom. I mean,
and if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that's fellow 5-star in his class, Jordan Burks, that he's doing that to.
Right. This is very similar to when you say, like, set the edge for a running lane. This happens on the inside a lot. Like, that's a running lane. The whole play is designed to create a running lane just out here rather than between the tackles.
And I'm, by the way, very much from an offensive perspective, glad to see Georgia do some of that stuff like they did right there and trying to get outside quick. It was, it's something that they've occasionally done for the most part there. But, the more they do that, the more they use the athleticism that they have along the offensive line and even in the backfield in the tight end position.
Game against Tennessee here that was I'm not going to say the game was in question, but it was competitive for longer than most of Georgia's games. And so meaningful snaps here for Broderick.
Yeah, and that's the thing that you're going to notice with this and really most all the running plays that we show. He finishes. Like he just keeps going and drives people oftentimes into the ground, just being bigger and stronger and also having a little bit of a nasty there. Get out of the way.
And that's a bit of the aggressiveness that I'm talking about. That comes off on tape too, that like he has no problem hitting people. And I even like, making sure that the communication's right here. You see him kind of pointing around and listening and make sure you heard right. Okay, there, cool. Get up, get set, drop my guy into the ground, did my job.
Yep. And he gets a little help from his buddy Schaefer to his left initially on that play. But, again, it's the finishing. And once you get, when you see that from a run blocking standpoint, like you don't often see that from McClendon. Like we showed McClendon maybe one play, I think, doing that on the right side. You don't as much see him doing that on the right side. You see the sort of dominant physical presence that Jones can be in the run game.
I think this particular play is something that he'll get to see personnel-wise, because you look who's in on this play with Broderick here. We've got Bowers, we've got Darnell, we've got Rosemary Jackson, who's one of the bigger wide receivers and best blockers, and a good John Fitzpatrick here. So when you start looking at personnel standpoint and all the big tight ends that Georgia has coming into 2022, I think this is going to be a situation that Jones finds himself in where I've got a lot of other blockers on this field with me.
Yeah, and you think about they use his athleticism. Like, I love this formation. So many different things you can do with it. But use his and Darnell's athleticism, and just those two getting in the way is going to create a running lane. And again, you see the finish.
So we'll show you how this gets set up again. I love the pre-snap motion here because it really gets the defense guessing. Why do you love this so much? I mean, obviously the blocking, but like, are you just saying because of the versatility of a Bowers and a Darnell of what can happen here?
Yes. And you can, if they overreact, you have one-on-one on the top. If they underreact, you have massive numbers. This is like student body left to the short side of the field. You still have, because of Darnell's ability as a blocker, you still have your split zone game to the other side. You can go like they did against Alabama some. You can still just go straight power. Hey, here's the ball running back. Everybody else is pushing forward. You can still run your counter game out of this. so many things you can do out of this formation because of Darnell's versatility and then Bowers being able to go win on the outside if you have to. You can run play action. Those guys can get across the field. I love that formation. It forces a defense, and what you wouldn't do, you want to force a defense to declare, to say, hey, we're going to give something up, or we're going to, shift our focus on this side versus the other side.
And you had mentioned relying on Broderick Jones' athleticism here. He has to make sure that his footwork is great. He doesn't step on anyone's feet, get out here, make his block, and then the play's going by him pretty quick.
Yep, and finishes again and does a good job of finishing. When you look at him from a run block standpoint, boom, into the ground. His run block grade was second only to Schaefer, and it was just right a tick behind Justin Schaefer's. And I think you give him more snaps in the run game, he will be. I think he will be the offense's highest graded run blocker this season. He's that good in the run game.
Only thing I'll say is that, like, sometimes the way he blocks, this could be turned into a holding call pretty quick, especially in the open field. So might want to watch where that hand placement is. I think he does an okay job here. He kind of hugs him a little bit, but some ticky-tack referees may not like it may not like the hug technique as much.
Now, this is one where he gets the one. I think this might be his only snap of the game at right tackle. And it might have been I think he had maybe like 8 or 9 snaps at right tackle in the season. But this is one of those where PFF grading shows up and the result of the play is completely different than his grade. Because this is
not a good effort.
Oh, crap. My quarterback's going to die moment. But Stetson gets rid of the ball and there. But you go back to the play itself and his ability, his thing, what he does himself here. He overextends himself and lunges forward. Once you do that and your head goes down, the defense is at the advantage. The defense is going more often than not going to win. And when you like the balance, that's where you see offensive linemen talk so much and coaches talk so much about how to keep your balance, head up, head still, all those kind of things.
Wide frame, right? You see how close his feet are. I mean, he's trying to catch up at this point. I get it. But, like, if you keep a wide base, you at least are going to take up more space.
Yeah. Your balance is there. You can adjust and anything. But once you get off balance, especially going forward, for the most part, you're beat.
I'll say this, though. This is a couple times in this series that we've had plays that, like, turned out in Georgia's favor because of pretty much Stetson and Brock Bowers, and in this case, like, Arian Smith too. But, like,
Stetson get ran the ball.
Like, for a quarterback that has made some boneheaded mistakes and put Georgia in some tough positions, man, did he bail out Georgia a lot, especially as the offensive line was gelling.
And this game specifically, by the way, because the touchdown to Bowers, the one up the sideline that Ladd was trying to catch him, that he ran, I think, an 80-plus yard touchdown. Stetson got destroyed. He got rid of that ball a hair before he gets destroyed on that play too.
We kept talking about the national title game. Let's actually show some of it.
And when you think about him specifically and what he did in the national championship game, and I even talked to someone, a couple weeks after the game, like, hey, about that move specifically. And it was
that move being that Jamari went in and Broderick playing left tackle.
Yeah, and it was and Erickson legit got had an injury and was kind of not able to do anything or do as well as he could or do, I guess, competent. But the comment to me was, we've never seen that in terms of Broderick's play, especially in the run game. And you look at his run block.
Because if they had, he would have played more.
If you look at his run block grade in the national championship game alone, 88.3. It was the highest single game grade in run blocking of any offensive lineman the entire season. So he did things in that game and everywhere, by the way, like the goal line play, the Zamir touchdown on the goal line. Phenomenal job of keeping low in this. But this one, the blocking here sets up perfectly for him, and he just executes it.
Again, really good athlete to get out here in space.
And he's the lead guy. He's the second guy.
You have to laud James Cook for the cutback here and going to where the open field is. But that's set up because of the blocking scheme.
Yep. Everybody on the front side did their job. Fitzpatrick's arc gets that guy looking a little bit, and Broderick hits it at the right time, and we just like showing great plays from the national championship on a consistent basis.
This was a big play too. This Georgia didn't have like a whole ton of chunk plays. I wouldn't say it was a pretty steady game. I mean, they were productive. Don't get me wrong.
This was a big momentum shifting play.
Right.
This was right after the blocked field goal, right?
Yep. Again, show you here, and I mean, this is both these guys. Schaefer,
kick out, lead, guard, tackle, counter.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Georgia runs counters.
And this footwork's got to be so precise. There's not a whole lot of room back there. That's a great job.
Hit and drive, big time play,
and that's against really good players too.
Yes. Now, one thing from
in watching it back, Chris Fowler was like, "Can James Cook take it to the house?" I'm like, "Not with that angle. I know he's fast, but he ain't that fast."
Yeah. And now this is a play, later in the game where you talk about the head, and this is just where experience, and I think one, seeing it in practice, because Georgia does this a ton on their own defense, is one thing. Live bullets in the game, different thing. But this is, a stunt where, Anderson goes inside, Harris comes around, and he's late to adjust to it. But a lot of times it's watch what he does with his head. He kind of commits to the block on Anderson here. Right there, commits, and then doesn't see in time Harris coming around. Now you look at Broderick's totality from a pass pro perspective. Solid 71.0 overall or 71.0 pass block grade. But from a pressure standpoint, he allowed 8 pressures on, I think, 194 pass block snaps. For comparison, Warren McClendon allowed 8 pressures on 427 pass block snaps. So, it's an area of improvement, and I think an offseason of being the guy, offseason of the reps with the number one group, and I think you're going to see him have a really, really good football season.
And I know this play doesn't look the greatest, but look, if I'm him, that's Will Anderson, man.
That's who I'm taking, right?
I'm gonna stick with him too, because he can cause more havoc faster than anybody else on that field.
When in doubt, block the best player on the defense.
Yeah, it's just Alabama made a play, and could Broderick have done a couple things better there? Maybe a little bit, but frankly, he needed another guy on that side. Alabama sent 2 guys his way and attacked him well, and that happens.
Yep, and but when you talk about the national championship, his dominant run blocking in that game, it made a difference. It made a big difference. His performance, his pass block grade in the Natty was 55.1. So but his run block grade, like I said, the highest of any single game of any offensive lineman all year.
I just realized this whole time that I was counting the wrong way with my scroll at the bottom. So at least I noticed it, because I had Broderick at 12 and then Christopher Smith at 11, but then also Kamari Lassiter at 12, because I can't count because I went to journalism school. But I can type.
The first thing you put was we're in the top 10. That was the first thing you said. We're in the top 10.
I know. I'm just an idiot. That's how that goes. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that can.
It is late.
Yeah, we were. Yeah, it is kind of late. But, overall, Broderick Jones deserves to be in the top 10 based off of PFF grades. I was surprised. You see it on the screen here. It's been here correct the whole time. 438 snaps. I didn't recall him playing to that degree. Now, I know Jamari missed a decent amount of time at the end of the season. And I know that Georgia blew out a lot of teams, so there was room to play for Broderick. But that's a really good sample size for him. Not always against the best competition, so I don't know if it's the best sample size in that sense. But overall, I think he comes in this season really well tested, and he's not a veteran. He's not a rookie either.
Well, you think about it compared to his freshman year, where it's like, hey, are we going to see this guy? Are we going to see this guy? He got 25 snaps as a freshman, 1 pass block snap as a freshman. The reps that he got this past year, vital. And now you go and you be the starter and you be the guy.
And I'll say this. If you look again at our now corrected running list at the bottom, you see Broderick Jones, you see Warren McClendon, you see Sedrick Van Pran. To have 3 players at those spots, both
3 most important spots.
Yes, that are graded 70 or above, and I would say all had really good seasons last year. That bodes well for Georgia's offense. You can talk about the running backs. You can talk about the wide receiver talent. You can talk about Stetson Bennett. having such a great season at the end of last year. If that offensive line plays up to that caliber, that's going to be the telltale sign of how far this team can go.
Yeah, and you think about, all right, you're playing now Ratledge. If he comes back and he was going to be your starter, goes out game one, so he didn't get the experience that you thought he was going to get. But Erickson's still there as a possibility as well. But all these other guys, whoever it is, especially if it's a new guy starting at guard, if it's a Truss or if it's a Devin Willock or somebody like that, they're going to look to their left and look to their right, and it's going to be experienced players on either side of them, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, and it's going to be a healthy competition in practice because Broderick Jones and Warren McClendon, I think that they're the starters at those spots, but there's a lot of talent behind them too when you start looking at Amarius Mims, when you see a guy like Ernest Green coming in and getting some headlines as a true freshman.
He's legit.
I think Truss has mostly moved to guard at this point, but he played some tackle too. So they're going to be guys in practice trying to push these guys, and George has been pretty healthy, especially at right tackle with McClendon. But you see last year, Jamari Sawyer missed I would say, a quarter of the season, a third of the season, especially toward the end. Being healthy is going to be important, and I think Broderick Jones has been for the most part. I'm excited to see what he can do with a full season as starting left tackle. We're in our top 10. Our bottom
single digits now.
Yeah, that means we go down to single digits into our series. The way we're doing this is we'll have 2 more weeks of 8 and 9, and then 6 and 7, where we kind of do slightly shorter episodes. We've gone a little long-winded on this one, and feature these guys. But once we get to that top 5, it'll be a little bit more in depth, and we can really highlight some of the best plays, some of the most game-changing plays, the real leaders of this team that helped Georgia win the title last year, and will be the ones that can see if they can repeat this year. We're going to wrap up this episode. For Brent and Rollins, I'm Dayne Young. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to YouTube or like on